Daniel Parker opened the front door and stopped, confused. On the other side was Helena, the cleaning lady who had been working at his house for 3 weeks. But something was different, very different. He looked at her, really looked, and felt something stir in the depths of his confused mind. The gentle face, the caring eyes, the slightly hunched posture of someone who had spent decades taking care of other people. The apron she wore under her uniform. "Grandma Mary," his voice broke. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You came back. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. Before we continue this incredible story, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? And have you ever mistaken someone for a loved one you lost? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. But to understand how we got to this extraordinary moment, we need to go back in time. 2 years earlier, when Daniel Parker had a completely different life, the golden pen glided over the contract as if it was signing destiny. Daniel, at 38, had just sold the rights to his epic novel Kingdom of Hearts for $2.3 million. The editor talked about adaptations and sequels, but Daniel could only think of one thing: Grandma Mary's moist eyes when she whispered about her impossible dream. "A big kitchen," she always said, stroking her calloused hands. "A kitchen where I can receive all the family we never had the chance to bring together." 3 weeks later, Daniel was driving his used Toyota Camry up the circular driveway of a 2-story colonial house in Austin, Texas. The afternoon sun painted the windows gold, and the aroma of wild roses danced in the warm air. "Dear," Grandma Mary's frail voice trembled as she slowly got out of the car. "Where are we?" "Home, Grandma." Daniel held her arm with infinite gentleness. "Our new home." When she saw the kitchen, marble countertops, wide window over the sink, central island that seated 8 people, Mary Parker covered her face with her hands and cried like a child. "You fulfilled my 50-year dream, my angel." Her tears soaked the floral apron she had worn since Daniel was a boy. "How will I thank you for a lifetime?" Daniel hugged the woman who had raised him after his parents died in an accident when he was 8. The woman who worked 3 jobs to keep him in school. The woman who read to him every night, even when she was too exhausted to keep her eyes open. "You've already thanked me every day of my life, Grandma, just by living." For months they lived as Daniel had always dreamed. Every morning he woke up to the aroma of fresh coffee and pancakes. Grandma Mary hummed in the kitchen while preparing breakfast, and Daniel joined her, helping set the table, watering the window plants, organizing the drawers with the meticulous care she had taught him. "See how this house comes alive when we care for it with love," Grandma Mary would say, wiping the counter until it gleamed. "A house isn't just walls, dear. It's where we keep our hearts." Daniel helped with everything, vacuumed the carpet while she polished the furniture, organized the library while she tended the garden. The colonial house breathed happiness. Every surface gleamed, every flower in the garden bloomed, every room was always tidy and airy. It was exactly as Grandma Mary had dreamed, a perfect home, cared for with love by a family that finally had space to be happy. But fate, as Daniel would discover, has a peculiar cruelty for those who finally find happiness. 6 months later, Dr. Martinez's words echoed through the sterile room like gunshots. Aggressive pancreatic cancer, stage 4, maybe 6 months if we're lucky. Daniel held his grandmother's hand, those hands that had fed him, comforted him, applauded him, and felt how small and fragile they were, like tissue paper that the wind could carry away at any moment. "Dear," Mary squeezed his fingers with surprising strength, "promise me something." "Anything. When I leave, don't let our little house die with me. Keep taking care of it like we took care of it together. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma, I promise." But promises, Daniel would discover, are easier to make than to keep when your heart is broken. 18 months after the funeral, the colonial house on Maple Street had become unrecognizable. If you passed by there at 3 in the morning, you'd see a single lit window, Daniel's office on the 2nd floor, where he spent entire nights hunched over his laptop, typing frantically. The stories that sprouted from his fingers were different now. Dark, full of characters who lost everything and never recovered. He wrote like a man possessed, as if he could type fast enough to escape the reality that surrounded him. Grandma Mary's dream kitchen had become a cemetery of empty pizza boxes and half-empty water bottles. The plants she had cared for so tenderly withered in dusty pots, their yellowed leaves scattered across the floor. The garden she adored was now a tangle of weeds growing wild. A thick layer of dust covered every surface that once gleamed. The curtains remained closed day and night, blocking the sunlight that Grandma Mary always said was the best medicine for any sadness. The air was heavy and stuffy. Dirty clothes accumulated in piles through the hallways. Moldy dishes piled up in the sink. Daniel couldn't even look at her favorite armchair without feeling his chest tighten, so he simply stopped looking, stopped cleaning, stopped living. "My God, Daniel, what happened here?" Mike Thompson, his best friend since college, entered the house like a hurricane of concern. His eyes swept the living room, clothes scattered, dirty dishes stacked, the sour smell of spoiled food in the air. "I'm working, Mike." Daniel didn't even look up from the screen. His beard had grown uncontrolled, and there were deep, dark circles under his eyes. "Working? Man, you're killing yourself!" Mike kicked, an empty bottle that rolled across the floor. "When was the last time you showered? Ate something that didn't come from a box? I don't need—" "Stop!" Mike slammed his hand on the table, making Daniel finally look up. "Listen, my wife knows a cleaning lady. Helena Rodriguez, she's coming Monday." Daniel shook his head. "I don't need anyone, Mike." Mike pulled a business card from his pocket and threw it on the table. "Your characters aren't keeping you alive, Daniel. This woman will put your house in order, and maybe that'll help you put your life in order too." When Mike left, slamming the door, Daniel looked at the card. Helena Rodriguez, residential cleaning, 30 years of experience. He threw it in the trash without a second thought. He had no way of knowing that Helena Rodriguez was about to enter his life in a way that would change everything. The following Monday, Helena Rodriguez parked her old Honda Civic in the driveway of the colonial house and sighed deeply. In 30 years of cleaning houses, she had seen everything, from immaculate mansions where she just freshened up to young people's apartments that looked like they'd been hit by a tornado. But when Daniel opened the door, Helena felt her heart tighten. The man in front of her was clearly lost. Disheveled hair, wrinkled clothes he'd probably been wearing for days, empty eyes that looked through her as if she didn't exist. "You must be Helena," he said in a tired voice. "Mike said you'd come." "Yes, sir, I'm here to help with the cleaning." Daniel waved vaguely toward the house. Do whatever you need to do. I'll be upstairs working. If you need anything, just let me know." And then he simply turned and went upstairs, leaving Helena alone in what she realized would be one of the biggest challenges of her career. The house had been magnificent once. She could see that. Beautiful architecture, quality furniture, every detail chosen with care and love. But now it looked like a mausoleum. Not just dirty, but mourning. The very walls seemed to be crying. Helena started with the kitchen, and that's where she found clues to this house's story. Photos on the refrigerator showed a younger Daniel with an elderly lady with a warm smile. They were always cooking together, tidying together, smiling together. The woman wore a floral apron in all the photos, and her eyes sparkled with that special light that only grandmothers have. "Ah, mijo," Helena whispered to herself, understanding immediately. "You lost your abuelita." Over the next 3 weeks, Helena worked harder than she had worked in years. She arrived at 8 in the morning and left at 5 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. Slowly, room by room, she tried to bring the house back to life, but it was an uphill battle. Every surface she cleaned during the day was covered with dust again when she returned. Every dish she washed was replaced by 2 dirty ones. The clothes she organized were thrown on the floor as soon as Daniel needed something clean. It wasn't malice on his part. Daniel simply didn't see the house anymore. He existed in it like a ghost, taking what he needed without caring about the state he left things in. When Helena spoke to him, he responded politely but distantly, as if she were just another element of the landscape he had stopped noticing. "Good morning, Mr. Daniel," she would say when she arrived. "Good morning, Helena," he would respond without looking up from his laptop. "I'm going to clean the living room today if you don't mind." "Sure, no problem." And so they continued. 2 people sharing the same space but living in completely different worlds. Helena could see the progress. The house was definitely cleaner than when she arrived, but it was fragile progress, partially undone each night. She knew it would take months, maybe years, to really restore that house to what it had been. And even then, only if Daniel started to help, to care again. Sometimes when she was cleaning, Helena found little hidden treasures. Love letters that Grandma had left for Daniel, handwritten recipes with notes like, "My little grandson's favorite sweet," photos of happy moments that were now dusty and forgotten, and her mother's heart broke a little more with each discovery. "This boy needs his abuelita," she murmured to herself, carefully storing each precious memory. "But she's gone, and he's so lost." On the third Friday, Helena was polishing the dining room table when she heard Daniel coming downstairs. It was unusual. He usually stayed locked in his office until very late. "Helena," he said, stopping in the doorway, "thank you for the work you're doing. I know it hasn't been easy." It was the first time in 3 weeks that he actually looked her in the eyes, and Helena saw there a pain so deep that she recognized immediately the same pain she had seen in the mirror after her husband died 8 years ago. "You're welcome, Mr. Daniel. Your house is very beautiful. It just needs a little love to shine again." He almost smiled. Almost. "My grandmother used to say that. She was a wise woman." She was. Daniel looked around the room, really seeing it for the first time in months. "She loved this house, said it was the dream of her life. And you took care of it together?" "We did." His voice broke slightly. "Every morning we had a routine. She made coffee, I helped with the plants, she polished the furniture, I vacuumed. It was like a dance we both knew by heart." Helena felt tears sting her eyes. "How beautiful, mijo." Daniel blinked, surprised by the affectionate familiarity. No one had called him mijo since Grandma Mary died. "I need to get back to work," he murmured, going upstairs quickly. But Helena stood in the room, a strange feeling growing in her chest. For a moment, just a moment, she had seen a glimpse of the man Daniel used to be, the caring grandson who took care of his grandmother, and the house with so much love. That man was still there, buried under layers of pain, and Helena began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could help bring him back. But she had no idea that fate was about to accelerate this process in a way neither of them could imagine. The following Monday, which would be the beginning of Helena's 4th week at the house, Daniel left early for a meeting with his editor. He was driving on I-35, but his mind was thousands of miles away, lost in memories of happy mornings with Grandma Mary. He thought about how she hummed while making pancakes, how her eyes sparkled when he helped her water the window plants. He thought about her last words, "Don't let our little house die with me." "I failed you, Grandma," he whispered to the fogged windshield. "I failed completely." The red light appeared in front of him like a blur. Daniel stepped on the brakes, but it was too late. The blue pickup hit him with a sound that echoed through the morning like thunder. Daniel's last thought before darkness was strange and specific. Grandma Mary always said that when you're lost, sometimes you need to be found in the most unexpected place. 5 days later, at St. David's Medical Center, Daniel woke up in a hospital room completely alone. There were no flowers, no cards, no one holding his hand, just the monotonous sound of monitors and the sterile smell of disinfectant. Dr. Jennifer Wells entered, consulting her clipboard. "Mr. Parker, how are you?" "Feeling?" "Confused," Daniel admitted, trying to focus. "What happened? Where is everyone?" "You were in a car accident. Mild head trauma, but you're recovering well." She observed him carefully. "As for visitors, well, your friend Mike was here the first night but had to travel for work. We don't have any other emergency contacts in your records." Reality hit Daniel like a second accident. He was completely alone. There was no one else in the world who cared enough to visit him in the hospital. "You're showing some symptoms of temporary retrograde amnesia," the doctor continued. "Nothing serious, but some recent memories might be confused for a while." "How long was I here?" 5 days. You were unconscious most of the time. 5 days alone. 5 days when no one missed him. The pain of loneliness was worse than any physical injury. "Can I go home today?" "Yes, if you feel ready, but I recommend rest and that someone stay with you for a few days." Daniel laughed, bitterly. "There's no one, doctor." When the taxi dropped him off at the Colonial House door, Daniel felt disoriented. Something was different. The house seemed cleaner, more organized. He shook his head, attributing the confusion to the accident. It was Monday, 9 in the morning. Daniel opened the front door, still a bit dizzy, still processing the reality that he had spent 5 days in the hospital without a single visit. And then the doorbell rang. He opened the door, and there was Helena Rodriguez. But this time something was completely different. The fog in his mind, the crushing loneliness he had felt in the hospital, the deep pain of having no one in the world, all of this combined in a strange way. When he looked at Helena, really looked, he saw not just the cleaning lady who had been working at his house for 3 weeks. He saw the gentle face, the caring eyes, the slightly hunched posture of someone who had spent decades taking care of other people. He saw the apron she wore under her uniform, so similar to Grandma Mary's floral apron, and his confused mind, hurt by loneliness and trauma, made the only connection that brought comfort. Grandma Mary. His voice broke. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You came back. I knew you wouldn't abandon me." Helena blinked, completely shocked. "Mr. Daniel, I think you're confused." But Daniel was already moving, his arms wrapping around her in a desperate hug. "I missed you so much," he whispered against her shoulder. "Where were you? I was so alone in the hospital, so alone." Helena stiffened for a moment. Then her maternal eyes swept over Daniel's shoulder to the interior of the house. For 3 weeks, she had worked tirelessly in this house, watching this man wither from sadness, knowing he had lost the most important person in his life. And now he was here, vulnerable and broken, holding on to her as if she were the only thing preventing him from drowning. She saw the genuine tears soaking her uniform. She felt the tremor in his shoulders, and something moved deeply in her mother's heart. Helena thought of her own granddaughter, Lucia, so far away at university. She thought of how devastating it had been to lose her husband. She thought of how sometimes we all need an abuelita to take care of us, even when we're adults. "Hi, mijo," she heard herself whisper softly, her hands finding his back with hesitation, then firmness. "Yes, your grandma is here." Daniel pulled back, holding her face with his hands. "I thought I had lost you forever." Helena looked into his eyes filled with such deep pain and such desperate need that she recognized immediately. This man wasn't pretending or lying. In his confused mind, he genuinely saw her as his salvation. "No, dear," she heard herself say, her voice becoming softer, more maternal. "I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, Helena Rodriguez made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. "Grandma," Daniel said, his voice full of relief and joy, "let me help you with those heavy things. You shouldn't be carrying all that by yourself." For the first time in 3 weeks, Daniel really saw Helena, not as an employee, but as someone who needed care. He took the basket of cleaning supplies from her hands and guided her inside. "Sit down, Grandma. You look tired. Let me make coffee for both of us." Helena watched, astonished, as Daniel moved through the kitchen with purpose for the first time since she had known him. He opened cabinets, looked for cups, turned on the coffee maker, small acts of care that she knew he hadn't done in months. "Grandma," he said while the coffee brewed, "I'm sorry about the state of the house. I know you always liked everything neat and tidy. Let's take care of it together again like before." And it was in that moment that Helena understood the true dimension of what was happening. It wasn't just that Daniel confused her with his grandmother. It was that seeing her as his grandmother had awakened something in him that had been sleeping for more than a year. His capacity to care, to love, to participate in life. For 3 weeks, she had fought alone against the deterioration of the house. Now, for the first time, she had a partner, someone who wanted to help, not because he was paying for a service, but because he loved and wanted to care. "Yes, mijo," she said softly, tears of emotion in her eyes. "Let's take care of our little house together." And so began the most beautiful lie Helena Rodriguez had ever told. During the following days, something magical happened in the house on Maple Street. Daniel woke up every morning at 7:30, half an hour before Helena arrived, to have everything ready to receive her. He made fresh coffee, opened the curtains to let the sun in, set the kitchen table. When Helena arrived at 8, he ran to the door like a child waiting for Santa Claus. "Good morning, Grandma Mary," he would say, hugging her warmly. "How did you sleep?" "Good morning, my son," Helena would respond, allowing herself to mix the Spanish that flowed naturally with the English he expected. "I slept well, gracias a Dios." And then they would begin their new routine, a dance of care that neither had planned but both desperately needed. Daniel insisted on helping with everything, not because he felt sorry for Helena, but because in his mind, she was his beloved grandmother, and grandsons take care of their grandmothers. "Let me carry that, Grandma," he would say, taking the vacuum from her hands. "Your back isn't what it used to be." "I'll do this, Grandma," he would say, taking the ladder to clean the high windows. "You've worked too hard today." And Helena, who had spent 3 weeks fighting alone against the entropy of the house, suddenly had an enthusiastic and loving partner. But more importantly, she saw that taking care of the house was healing Daniel in a way no doctor could achieve. He rediscovered the pleasure of seeing a surface shine after being polished. He smiled when the plants they watered together began to bloom again. He hummed while folding clothes, the same way he used to do with Grandma Mary. "You know, Grandma," he said in the second week, "I had forgotten how good it is to take care of our house, how satisfying it is to see everything tidy and shining." "Yes, mijo," Helena responded, watching him carefully organize the books on the shelf. "A house cared for with love always shines brighter." They were the very words that Grandma Mary used to say, words that Daniel had heard 1,000 times during his childhood, but coming from Helena, they sounded like a renewed blessing. The transformation was visible day after day. In 2 weeks, the house had recovered more life than in all the 18 months since Grandma Mary's death, not just because it was being cleaned, but because it was being loved again. Daniel went back to opening all the curtains in the morning, letting sunlight flood every room. He went back to watering the plants carefully, talking to them as Grandma Mary had taught him. He went back to polishing the furniture until it gleamed, organizing the books by author and by love, keeping every space tidy and airy. And Helena watched all of this with a mixture of joy and growing guilt. "Am I doing the right thing?" she asked herself every night, driving to her own house. "He's healing, but I'm lying to him." But then she thought of the broken man she had found 3 weeks ago, and the radiant man who now hummed while cleaning windows, and she knew that some lies are truer than truth itself. During the 3rd week, Daniel did something he hadn't done in almost 2 years. He started cooking again. "Grandma," he said on a Thursday morning, "how about if I make that stew you always prepared on Sundays?" Helena hesitated. She didn't know what stew he was talking about, didn't know the real Grandma Mary's recipes. "Ah, mijo," she said. "Carefully, why don't you remind me of the recipe? My memory isn't as good as it used to be." And then Daniel spent the entire morning teaching Helena how to make Grandma Mary's stew, reciting each ingredient with love, each step with care. Helena watched his hands move with purpose through the kitchen, saw his eyes sparkle as he shared precious memories. "She always said to stir clockwise," Daniel explained, "because that way you're mixing love in with the food." "What beautiful wisdom," Helena murmured, genuinely touched. When they sat down to eat the stew together, Daniel closed his eyes and sighed with contentment. "Perfect," he said, "exactly as I remembered." Helena felt a pang of guilt, but also of deep tenderness. She wasn't just pretending to be his grandmother. She was helping him keep alive the memories of his real grandmother. She was being a bridge between the love he had lost and the love he needed to rediscover in himself. But all good things have their price, and the price of this merciful lie was about to be collected. On Friday of the 3rd week, Helena woke up feeling strange, dizzy. There was a strange pressure in her head, and her left arm was tingling in a worrying way. "Must be tiredness," she murmured to herself, preparing for another day at Daniel's house. But as the morning progressed, she felt worse and worse. During lunch, when Daniel went out to buy groceries for the weekend, Helena sat in the living room chair and closed her eyes, trying to make the dizziness pass. That's when it happened. A flash of pain in her head, a sensation of falling, and then darkness. Daniel returned from shopping humming, excited to show Grandma Mary the fresh ingredients he had bought for them to make an apple pie together on Saturday. "Grandma," he called, entering the house, "I bought those red apples you love." Silence. "Grandma?" Daniel left the bags in the kitchen and went looking for her. That's when he found her in the living room, unconscious in the chair, her face pale and a strange asymmetry in her features. "My God, Grandma, wake up, please, wake up." Daniel called 911 with trembling hands, his world collapsing once again. While waiting for the ambulance, he held Helena's hand and whispered, "Please don't leave me again, I can't lose you again." When the ambulance arrived, he tried to get in with her, but the paramedic stopped him. "Sorry, sir, only immediate family." "She's my grandmother," Daniel screamed, desperately. "Please, she's all I have." But the ambulance doors closed and Daniel stood on the sidewalk, watching his world disappear for the second time. During the next 48 hours, Daniel tried to find out something about Helena's condition. He called all the hospitals in the region, but always received the same answer. "Sorry, sir, only family members can receive information." He drove to St. David's, where he had spent 5 days alone, and begged at the reception, "Please, I need to know how." "She is Helena Rodriguez. She's my family." "Sir, I understand your concern, but if you're not listed as an emergency contact..." Daniel returned home on a Friday night, completely devastated. The house that had come back to life in the last 3 weeks now seemed like a mausoleum again. But this time it was different. This time, every clean surface, every blooming plant, every gleaming piece of furniture reminded him of Helena, of the caring way she had let him help, of the patience with which she had pretended to be his grandmother, of the genuine love that had grown between them. He sat in the chair where he had found Helena unconscious and cried like he hadn't cried since Grandma Mary's funeral. The following Monday, Daniel anxiously waited for 8 in the morning. Maybe Helena was better. Maybe she would appear at the door with her maternal smile, ready for another day, taking care of the house together. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Daniel ran to the door, his heart racing with hope. But it wasn't Helena. A younger Latina woman, around 30, was standing on the porch with a basket of cleaning supplies and an uncomfortable expression. "Good morning," she said in English with a Texan accent. "I'm Maria Santos. I'm here replacing Helena Rodriguez. She had a stroke and won't be able to work anymore." Daniel's world tilted under his feet as if he were having another accident. "Stroke?" The words came out as a strangled whisper. "What are you talking about? Helena is my grandmother. She's not just a..." Maria blinked, confused and clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, Helena Rodriguez is a professional cleaning lady. She's worked for the cleaning company for 15 years. Didn't you know?" Daniel leaned against the doorframe, memory fragments crashing in his mind like pieces of broken glass. Mike mentioning a cleaning lady, a business card, the accident, the hospital. "Oh my God," he whispered, reality hitting him like a tsunami. "Helena isn't my grandmother. My Grandma Mary is dead." The memories all came back at once. 18 months of depression, the house deteriorating, Mike hiring a cleaning lady, the accident that confused his mind. And Helena. Helena had pretended to be his grandmother because she saw a broken man who desperately needed family. "Where is she?" Daniel asked urgently. "Which hospital?" "St. David's. But sir, are you okay? You should sit." Daniel was already grabbing his car keys. For the second time in a few weeks, Daniel ran through the corridors of St. David's Medical Center. But this time it was different. This time he wasn't confused or lost. This time he knew exactly who Helena Rodriguez was and what she had done for him. At reception, he didn't hesitate for a second. "I need to see Helena Rodriguez. I'm listed as..." "No, wait." Daniel stopped, breathed deeply, and looked straight into the receptionist's eyes. "She's not my biological grandmother, but she saved my life. She gave me back my humanity when I had lost everything. If that doesn't make her family, then I don't know what does." The receptionist studied his face for a long moment, seeing the genuine anguish and desperate love. "Room 314, she said softly. "Third floor." In the third-floor corridor, Daniel saw a young Latina sitting in a blue plastic chair, books scattered at her feet, tears silently running down her face. She had the same gentle eyes he had learned to love in Helena. "You must be Lucia," he said, approaching hesitantly. She looked up, surprised. "How do you know my name? Your grandmother talked about you all the time, about how you're studying to be a teacher, about how proud she is of you." Daniel sat in the chair next to her. "I'm Daniel Parker." Lucia's eyes widened. "You're Mr. Daniel. Abuela always talked about you when she came home from work." "What did she say?" Lucia wiped her tears. "She said you were a very sad man who had lost his grandmother, that your house was dying of sadness, but that she could see you were a good person underneath all that pain." Daniel felt his chest tighten. She told you what happened, that I confused her with my grandmother." "Yes," Lucia nodded. At first she was worried, didn't know if she should tell the truth, but then she saw how happy you became, how you started taking care of the house again, smiling again. She said that sometimes God puts us in people's lives in unexpected ways. "How is she?" Daniel, huh? Asked, his voice choked. Stable, but Lucia looked at the floor. The stroke was severe. The doctors don't know if she'll recover completely. And the bills, her voice broke. We don't have insurance that covers everything. I don't know how we're going to pay. Daniel was silent for a moment, processing everything. Then he stood up, determined. Can I see her? Of course. She would like to know you came. Daniel entered room 314 as if he were entering a church. Helena was connected to various monitors, her face peaceful but pale, breathing softly with the help of oxygen. He approached the bed and took her hand, those working hands that had brought life back to his house and his heart. Helena, he whispered, it's me, your boy. Tears fell onto the hospital blanket. Now I remember everything. I know you're not my Grandma Mary, and I know you chose to love me anyway. You chose to be my family when I had no one. He squeezed her hand gently. For 3 weeks, you pretended to be my grandmother. But you know what? You became my real family. Not because you fooled me, but because you loved me when I was lost. Helena didn't respond, couldn't respond, but Daniel swore he felt her fingers squeeze his, almost imperceptibly. I was dead inside, Helena, dead for 18 months, and you brought me back to life. You didn't just clean my house, you cleaned my soul. He leaned closer. Now it's my turn to take care of you. It's my turn to be family. 20 minutes later, Daniel found Dr. Patricia Vega, Helena's attending physician. Doctor, I'm Daniel Parker. I want to discuss Helena Rodriguez's treatment. Mr. Parker, I'm afraid only direct family members can... She is my family, Daniel interrupted softly. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, by love, and I want to provide the best possible treatment for her. Dr. Vega studied his face. Sir, treatment for a stroke of this magnitude can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Intensive, physical therapy, speech therapy, specialized care. I have $2.3 million in the bank, Daniel said simply. Money that was sitting there while I was dying of sadness. Helena taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. She chose to save me. Now I choose to save her. Dr. Vega blinked, surprised. Are you sure about this financial decision? Doctor, Daniel smiled for the first time in days. Family is about showing up when someone needs you. Helena showed up for me when I was a broken stranger. Now I show up for her. An hour later, Daniel was again sitting next to Lucia in the corridor. Lucia, he began carefully, I want to talk about the hospital bills. Mr. Daniel, please. You don't need to worry. Yes, I do. Helena saved my life in a way you can't imagine. Let me save hers. Lucia stared at him with tears in her eyes. Why would you do this? You barely know her. Barely know her. Daniel shook his head. Lucia, for 3 weeks your grandmother gave me something I thought I had lost forever. A family. She could have corrected me on the first day, told me the truth, but she saw a broken man who needed love and chose to give it. He turned to face her completely. Your grandmother taught me that people are like plants that need to be watered with love to grow strong. For 3 weeks, she watered me with love when I was dying. Now I want to water her back to health. She always said that, Lucia whispered, touched. She gave me a family when I had none. Now I want to give you both the security you deserve if you'll let me. Lucia cried, but this time they were tears of gratitude and relief. She said you were special, that you had a good heart underneath all that pain. I was just a lost man who was lucky to be found by the right person, Daniel said. And now we three are family, if you want. 6 weeks later, Helena was home, at Daniel's house, which was now their house. The doctors were amazed by her recovery. It's impressive. What love can do, Dr. Vega had commented. It's as if she had something very important to live for. Helena was in a wheelchair, her left side still weak, but her spirit was intact. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't taking care of anyone. She was being taken care of. No, 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 Helena laughed as Daniel tried to fold a sheet. Ay, mijo, you still fold like someone who's never seen clothes in their life. Grandma Helena, Daniel protested, but he was smiling. I've been folding sheets for weeks. You taught me. I taught you wrong then, Helena joked, taking the sheet with her good hand. Come here, let me show you again. Lucia looked up from her books at the kitchen table. Uncle Daniel, don't let her fool you. She practiced folding sheets with the physical therapist just so she could show off. Uncle Daniel? Helena smiled, her eyes sparkling. Listen to that. my son and my granddaughter, getting along like real family. It had been Lucia's idea to call Daniel Uncle. "You're not old enough to be my grandfather," she had said with a smile, "but you're too important to be just Daniel." The physical therapy sessions had become family time. Daniel held Helena while she practiced walking. Lucia counted the repetitions, and everyone celebrated each small progress as a victory. "Speaking of family," Daniel said, settling into the armchair that had once been his prison and was now his throne, "I have news." The two women looked expectant. "I finished my book, the one I started writing about us, about how a cleaning lady saved a writer and how a writer found his family." Helena clasped her hands together. "Hi, mijo, how wonderful. What's it going to be called?" Daniel picked up a manuscript from behind the chair. "Watered with Love, the true story of how a stranger became my family." He read the dedication aloud. "To Helena Rodriguez, who taught me that family is a choice we make with our hearts, not an accident of birth. And to Lucia Rodriguez, who showed me that love multiplies when it's shared. And in memory of Mary Parker, whose death taught me about loss, but whose love taught me that true family never dies. It just transforms." Helena was crying, happy tears this time. "You wrote our story." "I wrote a love story," Daniel corrected. "The truest one I know." 2 months later, Daniel did something that left Lucia speechless. She came home from university to find an official letter on the kitchen table. "Uncle Daniel," she said, hands on her hips in a pose so similar to Helena's that he smiled. "We need to talk." "About what, my daughter?" "About the mysterious full scholarship that covered all my tuition, plus student housing, plus allowance for books." Helena stopped stirring the stew, looking between them. "What mysterious scholarship?" Daniel sighed dramatically. "Lucia, you're brilliant. You deserve to study without worrying about money. That's not your responsibility, isn't it?" Daniel stood up. "Helena gave me back my life. Helping you build your future is the least I can do. Besides," he smiled, "what's the point of having money if I can't use it to water my family with love?" Helena burst into tears. "This man, he uses my own words against me." Lucia hugged Daniel, crying, "This is too much, Uncle." "Lucia," Daniel said softly, "for 18 months I had all that money but no family to love. You two gave me back the joy of having people to care for. This isn't charity. It's family. Investment." "Our family," Helena repeated, savoring the words. "Our family," Daniel confirmed. 6 months later, Book People bookstore in Austin was packed beyond capacity. Daniel's book had become a phenomenon, not just for the beauty of the writing, but for the universal message about chosen family. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the manager, "please welcome Daniel Parker, author of Watered with Love." Daniel took the stage, but his eyes immediately found Helena and Lucia in the front row. Helena was using only a cane now, her recovery almost complete. Lucia was wearing her student teacher clothes. "This book," Daniel began, "is about the most unlikely family anyone could imagine, a family that started with confusion, grew through a merciful lie, and became the truest thing in my life." He gestured toward Helena and Lucia. "Helena Rodriguez taught me that love is an action, not just a feeling. And Lucia Rodriguez showed me that family isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build, one choice at a time." During the Q&A session, a woman raised her hand. "Mr. Parker, what's your message for people who feel they've lost their family?" Daniel looked at Helena, who nodded encouragingly. "Look around. The family you need might be disguised as the person who delivers your pizza, cleans your office, or teaches your children. Family isn't about DNA. It's about showing up for each other every day. What if someone has hurt us? How do we forgive?" "Helena taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain," Daniel responded. "It's about choosing love even when it hurts. It's about watering people with love until both you and they grow strong." After the book signing, an elderly man said, "Your story made me realize I haven't spoken to my daughter in 5 years because of a silly fight. I'm going to call her today." "That's what Helena would say," Daniel smiled. "It's never too late to start watering someone with love." 1 year later, the aroma of Helena's tamales filled the house on Maple Street as Daniel set the table for Sunday dinner. It was tradition now, family and friends gathering to share food, stories, and love. "Uncle Daniel!" Lucia shouted from the kitchen, holding her newborn daughter, Sophia. "Abuela wants to know if you bought the good salsa or that bland stuff again." "I heard that," Helena laughed from the stove. "And I didn't say bland. I said that sad stuff that looks like ketchup with depression." Daniel tied, his apron laughing. "That's exactly what she said." The doorbell rang. Mike and Sarah arrived, followed by Daniel's editor, Lucia's colleagues, neighbors who had become family. The house filled with the warm chaos Daniel had always dreamed of. "You know," Mike said quietly, "when I hired that cleaning lady, I never imagined you'd find an entire family." "None of us imagined it," Daniel agreed, watching Helena teach Sarah how to make tortillas. "But that's the beautiful thing about love. It shows up in the most impossible places." When everyone gathered for dinner, Daniel stood with his glass raised. "I want to make a toast," he said, looking at the faces that had become his world. 2 years ago, I was a man who had forgotten how to live. I was drowning in pain, convinced that family was something you were born having, not something you chose to create." He looked at Helena, who was wiping her eyes with her napkin. "Then Helena Rodriguez entered my life, pretending to be my grandmother, and taught me the most important truth I've ever learned. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about watering each other with love until we all grow strong enough to face any storm." Daniel raised his glass. "So here's to Helena, who saved me by pretending to be who she wasn't, but becoming exactly who I needed. To Lucia, who reminds me every day that the future is built with hope and education. And to all of you, who prove that family is something we build together, one meal, one laugh, one act of love at a time." "Cheers," Helena shouted, and the room echoed with love. Later, while cleaning up together, Daniel found himself watching Helena and Lucia working side by side, talking in a mixture of Spanish and English, moving in perfect synchronization. "Mijo," Helena called, noticing him standing still. "Come help us finish. Family cleans together." Daniel smiled, rolling up his sleeves. "I'm coming, Grandma Helena." Outside, a gentle rain had begun to fall over Austin, watering the earth and making everything grow. Inside the house on Maple Street, 3 people who had found each other through a beautiful confusion continued the daily work of loving each other home. 2 years later, in the same kitchen that had been a mausoleum and was now the heart of a family, Daniel was preparing coffee when a little voice shouted, "Grandpa Daniel, Grandpa Daniel." He turned to see Miguel, 7 years old, running into his arms. Miguel was the son of one of the students Lucia had taught, a child who needed extra care after school. "Good morning, champ," Daniel said, lifting the boy. "Ready to help great-grandma Helena make cookies today?" "Yes, she said she's going to teach me to make heart shapes." "Of course I am, mi nieto," Helena called from the stove, where she was preparing the dough. "Everything we make here is heart-shaped." Daniel watched his family. Not the family he had been born having, but the family he had chosen to build. Helena teaching Miguel how to stir the dough, Lucia nursing baby Sophia while reviewing lesson plans, a house full of laughter, mixed languages, love chosen daily. Sometimes the family you need finds you when you're not even looking. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a cleaning lady with a bucket and a mop and stays to clean your heart. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to spend the rest of your life learning that the best family is the one you water. Every day with love, until everyone grows strong together. What an incredible story, isn't it? Have you ever found family in totally unexpected places? Have you ever had someone enter your life pretending to be one thing and become something even more important? Share your own stories of family love in the comments below. And if this story touched your hearts like it touched mine, don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to remember that family is something we choose to build every day. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that celebrate the transformative power of chosen love. Because in the end, the best families are the ones we water with love until we can all flourish together.